The night I watched a man everyone called crazy lift a crying baby out of a gutter and whisper, "My blessing has come." Lagos went quiet in a way I didn't know Lagos could. Like the city itself took a breath and didn't let it out. Like thunder somewhere far off told the street to hush and listen. Yeah, that happened. And it rearranged the way I think about family forever. I was cutting through the market at dusk, those faulty yellow bulbs stuttering over empty stalls. A half-eaten roasted plantain on a plank like somebody left in a hurry and never came back, and there he was, Jonas, barefoot, dragging one leg like it remembered a wound the rest of him had learned to forget, a once blue shirt gone the color of old rainwater, hair like twisted ropes, eyes sharp as a cornered rat. And before the voices took his life for themselves, he had been a teacher. That's what people said in the kind of voice Lagos uses when it's almost ready to forgive you, but not yet. He heard it first, that thin cry cutting through the alley, and he moved the way a man moves toward an answer he thinks is his, mumbling at the sky while his toes felt their way along broken concrete. Then he peeled back a dirty cloth, and two brown eyes blinked up at him, and the baby was beautiful in that brand-new way only babies get to be. And Jonas put his hands on his chest like he was steadying a door in a windstorm, and said it again, "My blessing." And the child quieted like he knew the word was for him. He walked past a woman with tomatoes who stared like she was measuring sin, past the kiosks where people shook their heads the way people do when they want the story to be simple again, into a half-built concrete shell he called home, and I followed at a distance, not because I was brave, but because I couldn't make my feet do anything else, you know what I mean? Inside, he cleared a square on the floor like he was building a throne from dust, foam scraps, newspapers, torn wrappers, and he laid the baby down and fanned him with cardboard, then laughed, loud and round. "From today, blessing, this is your palace." And thunder rolled soft on the roof sheet like applause that didn't want to embarrass anybody. Word lives fast in a market. And by morning the stairs weren't the usual lazy kind. They were the kind that weigh, that count, that get ready to judge. 3 women came with a man behind them like a shadow that wanted to be a cop, sunglasses too big for her face and a voice already angry, calling it abuse, calling him a lunatic, insisting that babies don't fall from heaven into gutters. And Jonas stepped out with blessing in one arm and a jagged stick in the other. "Say that again and see the fire in my bones." And the crowd edged closer the way a crowd always does, phones up, approval on hold. And then it happened, the tiny, ridiculous miracle that keeps this world from killing itself. The baby smiled, and for a second we were all quiet enough to hear our own hearts. His eyes lost their light, and Jonas, talking to a crushed Fanta bottle like it owed him advice, bolted into the day, begging for food, then deciding it had to be milk, real milk. And an old man whispered to his wife, "He's mad, but that's a father." And I remember thinking how we hide our mercy behind sentences like that, like we need to apologize for it. He carried blessing to the clinic when the fever wouldn't break, and the nurse shrank back, and the young doctor with glasses tried to be both firm and kind, told Jonas the baby was malnourished, the gut swollen from bad food and dirty water, offered to keep the child for safety, and Jonas lost it, knocked a tray, shouted about thieves in lab coats, promised to burn the sun down before he'd hand over his son, then dropped to his knees and begged at the same time. That heartbreaking mix of rage and love you see in parents who know they're out of tools. And the doctor did the smartest thing he could. He slowed the room down, kept his hands where Jonas could see them, and said, "Bring him back every week." And the nurse exhaled like she'd been strangling herself. And Jonas walked out with blessing tucked tight like a secret, saying to the street, to anyone, to the voices, "I am a father." And the market pretended not to hear, because that's easier than agreeing. Here's the twist I didn't expect, and maybe you won't either. I had come to Lagos to teach for 1 year. To feel useful after a loss I still didn't know how to name. A messy divorce, a miscarriage that turned a crib into a box of folded clothes we never opened again. And watching Jonas feed that boy with a bottle he'd made from a glove and an old water bottle, washing rags at a leaky tap, chanting clean before feed, like scripture, I felt a piece of my bitterness unclench, tiny but real, like a rusted hinge finally catching the light. Blessing grew anyway, because children are conspiracy theorists against despair. And Jonas, still ragged, still humming to ghosts, started sorting plastics for coins, carrying blocks at sites, cleaning what he could clean, trimming the shouting down to a murmur as if love had turned the volume just enough to hear the world again. He taught letters on a slab of plywood with a charcoal nub, drew A and stretched his mouth wide to show how it worked, laughed like a drum when the boy made the shape back at him. And when Blessing started school, after Jonas gathered every naira from odd jobs and walked into a head teacher's office with the calm of a man who's already lost too much to be afraid, the whole street stopped pretending it wasn't invested. They watched the madman stand outside the gate like a sentry, watched him lift the boy onto his back for the walk home, listened through the cracked wall at night, while Blessing read about photosynthesis and Jonas nodded like he understood the whole green magic of it, which maybe he did in some way words don't measure, and passed them like the city had been clearing a path for him since the day he learned to crawl. And one afternoon a letter arrived and Lagos did that thing where it pretends it's not crying. And Jonas danced shirtless under a sky that finally felt like it belonged to him, shouting about ties and universities and a boy from the trash who was going to build roads. When Blessing got the engineering job, apartment, car, a company that knew his file and treated it like a holy book, he didn't throw a party, didn't post anything for likes. He put his first salary into his father's mind, into doctors and therapy and quiet rooms where somebody finally called Jonas by his name and not the names the street had tattooed on him. 3 months later the beard was trimmed, the voices gentled, the memory steadier, not cured like a miracle, more like a man learning to stand on a repaired leg, awkward, proud, unashamed. They sat on a balcony one night, city lights below like someone spilled stars on the ground, and Jonas said, "I don't know if it was fate or madness that made me pick you up, but even when I didn't know the day, I knew your face." And Blessing, swallow hard, breathe slow, said, "Blood or not, you gave me life." And they held each other like the world finally got something right. Success didn't inflate Blessing, it widened him. Pulled abandoned kids out of the same cold places he'd come from. Paid for therapy for men who talked to shadows because they'd had no one else to talk to. And in the first year, the number of second chances they collected could make a cynic rethink their brand. Jonas kept chickens on a little plot outside the city, woke early to feed them. Fed the strays too, the same dogs who had once been his only witnesses. And on Sundays they sat in the same church where people used to toss them coins like absolution. And the stairs now had respect in them, and I won't lie, it felt good to see a street change its mind. At a fundraiser, Blessing took a mic in a plain white shirt and said he stood there not because he was the smartest, but because he was loved by a man the world called crazy, and the room got that soft, heavy silence that means truth just walked in and sat down, and in the back Jonas clapped like a boy at recess, laughing through tears. If you want a neat ending, Lagos can sell you one for cheap. But here's the scene I keep. A graduation hall where an oversized suit doesn't care it's out of place. Jonas shouting, "That's my son." When engineer Blessing Jonas is called, and a few people laugh, and more people clap, and then a smaller room later, a birthday for 70 years survived. A child from the foundation tugging Jonas's sleeve to ask if he's the Jonas on the banner, and he grins and says, "I'm proof broken men can raise kings." And it lands in the room like a blessing that knows its name. Walking back to my apartment that night, the streetlights blinked like they were trying to remember their own stories. The exact inch where the state should step in, and the exact inch where a father should be left alone to love a child the way only he can. In a world that judges from a distance and rescues on a schedule, who did right here, who failed, what would justice look like if you were the nurse, the neighbor, the head teacher? Who gets to define a family? And if you had been there that night in Lagos when a madman found a baby and called him Blessing, what would you have done?